Hello, good evening, and welcome. Once again, we step into the craziness that is Tavern Brawl. This week, double Deathrattler Battler, where minions get to die twice. Well, not quite. The minion will die, and their death rattle will trigger twice. Some of the death rattles are great, some are bad for you, and some are meh. With that in mind, I'm going to run through a few cards that you should either think about putting in your deck if you have them, or you might see when playing the Tavern Brawl. The first one is Sylvanas, which is when she dies, she takes a random minion. But obviously with this, she'll take 2 random minions, which is pretty awesome. The next few cards I've grouped together because when they die, they summon something. And the best one of those is Dreadsteed, because when it dies, it doubles itself on the board. And then they die, and then they double themselves, and eventually you have a board full of Dreadsteeds, which is pretty good. If you're playing against it, it is imperative that you get a silence. Although, to be honest, with this Tavern Brawl, having silences in your deck already is pretty good. Obviously, if you're rogue, you can do things like bouncing them back into your hands, but for all other classes, getting some silences is recommended. Then we've got Sneed's Old Shredder. When it dies, it summons a legendary. Or in this case now, it will summon 2 legendaries. They may be good, they may be bad, but that's 2 legendaries on your side of the board. Next are Stalag and Fugan, our friends from Nax. When they both die, you get a Thaddeus. Now you get 2 Thaddeus's, which is amazing. Obviously it's a little tricky to get off because you need to have both of them die, so you'll need to draw both those cards, but having 2 11/11s on the board is, pretty good. Next is Twilight Summoner. It's expensive cost for just a 1/1, but then when it dies it will give you a 5/5, or in this case 2 5/5s, so well worth the cost of the card. If you can get these minions from cards that summon other creatures, then that's even better because you're getting huge amount of value. And the last one I've added is Moat Lurker. Now this is an interesting one because when it dies it summons what it gobbled up, except because this time the death rattle is doubled, it spits out 2 of them. It's better to nom your own minions, because then if you've got a minion with death rattle and you eat it, the death rattle goes off, then Moat Lurker dies, you get 2 more minions with the death rattle, and so it gets to go off again, which is amazing and can be broken in so many cool ways. But obviously because Moat Lurker is so expensive, it's quite a late game thing to do, so it's more of a win more thing, but fun if you can pull it off. Moving on to our taunts, we have Sludge Belcher and Infested Tauren. Sludge Belcher was a very powerful taunt card back in the day before it went off into the depths of Wild, but obviously with Tavern Brawl you get to play all the Wild cards, so it is back again with a vengeance. Very good stats, very difficult to get rid of, and then it poops out some more taunt dudes. And obviously Infested Tauren, same sort of thing. When it dies, because you have 2 2/2s, it is really good board presence, and it's cheap to play as well. Moving on to our card draw minions, we have Polluted Hoarder and Loot Hoarder. You'll get 2 cards when they die. It is very important to manage your hand carefully when you're playing with these minions, because it's very easy to fill your hand up. The other important thing to note with this is if your opponent is playing them, abuse them hard by killing them off, filling your opponent's hand, and hopefully milling them. Onto our buff minions, we have Spawn of N'Zoth and Anubiseth Sentinel. Spawn of N'Zoth gives everything +1/+1. Obviously this time around it will give everything +2/+2. Well, it's +1/+1 and then +1/+1 on top of that. And then Anubiseth Sentinel will give a random minion +3/+3, and then another +3/+3, which obviously you only have 1 minion out, that will get +6. So really good, but if you can abuse them in fun ways, even better. And if you're playing against them, try and leave those ones till last, and make sure you try and kill them if there's nothing else on the board, because otherwise they can cause your opponent's army to get massively out of control, and then you lose, which is never good. So with the exception of Dreadsteed, they are our neutral minions that are worth grabbing or watching out for when you're playing against your opponent. There are some other Deathrattle cards that are class specific, like Unearthed Raptor. While itself is not a Deathrattle minion, it will copy a Deathrattle ability, so that's very powerful if you want to duplicate your Deathrattle effect again. Then definitely play those. Good stat line on them as well. Another rogue card is Jade Swarmer. One of the new cards. When it dies, it will poop out a Jade, and then it will poop out another one. But because of the Jade mechanic, it will actually increase that by 1. So you'll drop a 1/1 and then a 2/2. Or if you've played other Jade stuff before that, then it will make those bigger, which is really good. There's the new card Aya Blackpaw. When she dies, she'll drop a Jade Golem, but this time she'll drop 2. And the fact that she drops 1 when she comes in, so effectively you'll get 3 Jade Golems from her, which is pretty powerful. What's also worth noting is cards that have Deathratter effects that aren't creatures, like weapons and spells, also work. So for example, the Hunter card, Explorer's Hat, it will give your minion +1/+1, and then when it dies you get the card back, but because it's duplicated you'll get 2 cards. So effectively once you start playing that card you'll never run out, unless of course it gets silenced or bounced back to your hand or stolen or whatever, but generally speaking you'll never run out of Explorer's Hats, and you can just keep hatting up all your dudes. Other cards that are useful for this Tavern Brawl that aren't strictly speaking Deathrattle cards, things like Feigned Death for Hunter, which will obviously trigger all your Deathrattles on your minions, and then there's Princess Run, however you say that, who will do the triggering a Deathrattle on a specific minion. So maybe this is a Tavern Brawl where you get to use her. I don't have her, but if anyone does, let us know how you get on with that. Staying with a Hunter, you have Forlorn Stalker, which when that gets played, its battle cry is to give all your Deathrattle minions +1/+1. So Hunter is a pretty good class to go with this particular Tavern Brawl, considering they have a lot of Deathrattle style effects and minions as well. Moving away from Hunter to Shaman, and they have a very powerful spell of Ancestral Spirit, which is when this minion dies, resummon it. So obviously when that goes off, you'll get 2 copies of whatever dies, which is pretty awesome. Going back to Rogue, they have Journey Below, which is discover a Deathrattle card. So if you don't have any of the big powerful Deathrattles, you could play this card, cross your fingers, and hope that you'll get one of them. More often than not, you'll get some of the really crap ones. But hey, you get a choice of 3, so, choose wisely. Back to the neutral cards, and while they don't actually have Deathrattle on them, they are very useful in this Tavern Brawl. The first one is Undertaker. While it has been nerfed, it's still a pretty good opener, because it only costs 1, and when you play a Deathrattle minion, it will give you +1 attack. So if they don't get rid of it, then that can be buffed up quite nicely. Go face or clear off a minion or whatever, but very useful to have. One of the best taunts in this Tavern Brawl would be the Little Exorcist. Doesn't get to see much play, but because obviously your opponent will be playing lots and lots of Deathrattle minions, when you play her, she will get buffed. Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe even more. But it's a great way of putting up a big taunt, because what I've found is that a lot of people play small Deathrattle minions, trying, like a zoo effect. So when she goes down, she can take most, if not all, of that damage back. And probably the 2 best cards of all for this particular Tavern Brawl are Kel'Thuzad and N'Zoth. Kel'Thuzad obviously brings back whatever died that turn, and N'Zoth brings back all your Deathrattles. So you can just keep playing over and over again all your Deathrattles forever and ever, or at least until you win, or lose, but hopefully win. And the last 2 cards that I have here, just before we delve into the games themselves, are Baron Rivendare and Weasel Tunneler. I just want to make a quick mention of these just to point out that Baron Rivendare doesn't actually work in this Tavern Brawl. So unfortunately, you can't have your Deathrattles trigger twice and then trigger twice again. They've thought ahead and they've made it so that doesn't happen. Sorry. And the other one is Weasel Tunneler. When it dies, it will go into your opponent's deck. Sure. Then it will go back into your deck because the Deathrattle has triggered again. This threw me to start with because initially I thought, oh cool, if it dies, I'll put 2 copies into your opponent's deck and really screw with their minds. But no, it's 1 Weasel Tunneler and then it dies. Because it then obviously is on your opponent's side, the Deathrattle triggers and the Deathrattle is go to your opponent's deck, and that obviously is you. So yeah, if you just want to play it and have a minion that when it dies goes back into your deck, so effectively you never run out of cards, then give it a go. But to be honest, it's fairly janky and there are much better ways to win a game. And to be honest, the game's over fairly quickly. I haven't seen any games yet go to fatigue. So yeah, it's there if you want to give it a try for a bit of fun, but I wouldn't recommend it. And there we go. There are all the cards that I've pulled up. There are obviously many more. If you can think of any other fun Deathrattle cards, let us know in the comments. And if you can think of any crazy comments, let us know there as well. But for now, let us crack on with the games.
Valera versus Valera.
Watch your back. I always do.
Ha 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 ha! Let's dance. I feel icky.
Here we go.
Hey, do you want to buy a funnel cake?
Here we go.
None see the lotus.
go.
Job's done.
I feel icky.
Ha, this guy's toast.
Here we go.
Job's done.
At least I had chicken.
You want to buy a funnel cake?
Here we go.
Job's done.
Balance in all things.
I wonder. I'll meet you soon. I did. Happy Feast of Winter.
Nothing exciting. But there we go. Alright, let's go open the packs on our other account, shall we? Okay, let's see what's in this pack. Nothing exciting. Oh well, on to our third and final pack. Our last pack. See if we get anything good out of it. The answer is yes! An Ancient of War and a Lava Burst Golden. Amazing. There we are. Tavern Brawl done. What do I think of it? It's very, very cool. Every Deathrattle card is using Baron Rivendare's ability. Do the Deathrattle twice, and some of the Deathrattles are a lot more powerful than others. Some Deathrattles will screw you over, like Bomb Squad, which is deal 5 damage to you, so that will be 10 damage to you. Other Deathrattles, even though they are going twice, won't have the effect twice. For example, if you do Tyrion, when he dies, you'll equip the 5/3 Ashbringer. You'll equip 2 Ashbringers, but obviously you only see one of them. There are plenty of Deathrattle minions out there to play with, and lots of experimentation going on. Brings me to the downside to this Tavern Brawl. The fact that you need a lot of cards for this in order to make it fun, and you'll be able to beat other opponents relatively easily. If you are lacking in the cards, especially if you're using free-to-play accounts that don't have many cards, then this Tavern Brawl can be very tough. However, saying that, a lot of the cheaper Deathrattler cards are still pretty good, and you can get a reasonably good deck, put those together. And obviously you don't have to stick exclusively to Deathrattler cards. You can complement it with your usual array of normal minions and spells to help you get through it. Overall though, very good Tavern Brawl, definitely worth checking out. Let us know if there's any interesting Deathrattler cards that you've found, or any crazy combos that you've used in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to tell your friends and your family about us. Check out our other videos. Like, subscribe, and until next time, game over, yeah.
Game over. Yeah.